Chapter 2. How the burden can be light, though the suffering is heavy. My yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Matthew 11:30. Of the Pharisees it is said, They bind heavy burdens, grievous to be borne, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not touch them with a finger. Matthew 23:4. And this mode of conduct is unfortunately repeated very frequently in the world. It is repeated in those relations where it might seem that such a difference was fundamental, that one party should bear the burden, the other be free, even if it in truth is not so, because the one must bear the burden of a sovereign, the other of a subject, the one the burden of a teacher, the other that of a disciple, and thus everyone still bears his own burden. No one is exempt, not even the independent man, who must bear the burden of responsibility, while the dependent one bears the burden of duty. The same Pharisaical conduct repeats itself even in those relationships where it is fitting that the two should pull in equal yoke with one another, in that the one is so inclined to wish to bind the burden and lay it on the other, so that the husband demands everything of his wife, and the wife everything of her husband. Those in a relation of friendship and harmony will not render like for like, but they demand everything of the friend, of the fellow laborer, and that they themselves be free. Aye, we not only see this, but we see the even more distressing thing, that a man through ingratitude, insensitivity, capriciousness, in addition to the difficulty, makes the burden hard to bear, in that he selfishly demands that the other shall bear the burden, and then even makes it hard for him to bear it. This is not a dissatisfied and ill-humored description of the world as it is at the present moment. On the contrary, it is an ancient experience, verified at the most varied periods of the greatest diversity. Thus, the human race is indeed akin to the divine, but also more or less degenerate. This is best seen if one observes the pattern of the race. For if a man were not akin to God, such a pattern could not exist for him. But on the other hand, precisely when one looks at the pattern, the degeneracy shows itself in stronger colors. If one looks at the pattern in all its purity, then the shadow of degeneracy appears the darker. This pattern is our Lord Jesus Christ. He came not to be served, not to lay burdens upon others. He bore the burdens, the heavy burden, which everyone, each one in particular, preferred to shift from himself, the burden of sin, the heavy burden which not even the race was able to bear, the sin of the race. And it was made difficult for him to bear it. He was forsaken, despised, persecuted, insulted. Moreover, he was delivered over to death by sinners. He was and is regarded as an enemy by sinners, because he is the friend of sinners. Nevertheless, he bore the burden which the race had laid upon him, or he took it upon himself. Not only that, but his whole life and every moment of his life was spent in bearing the burdens of others. For these are his words, Come unto me, all ye who labor and are heavy laden. Matthew 11:28. But on the other hand, no one has ever heard that he said, No, today I have not time, today I am not disposed, since I am invited to a pleasure gathering. Today I am not in the mood, since I have myself been worried. Today I have lost patience with men, for I have so often been deceived. No, such words are not heard from his lips, for then there would also have been deceit in his mouth, which the Scriptures deny, and faith shudders at, for he had not thought it in his heart. No man's suffering was so horrible that he desired to remain unconscious of it, so that it might not disturb his joy or increase his sorrow. His only joy lay in securing rest for the suffering soul, and his greatest sorrow was when the sufferer refused to accept his help. Wherever you met him, whether in a place apart to seek solitude, or in the temple and in the market in order to teach, he was instantly willing. He did not make the excuse that he desired to be alone. He did not excuse himself because he was busy. When those who were his nearest kin wished to misuse this relationship, wished to make demands upon his time, then he knew them not. But if it was a sufferer, he recognized him immediately. When the ruler sent a messenger for him, he came, and when in passing a woman touched the hem of his garment, he did not say, "Do not stop me." No, he paused, and when the disciples wished to keep the crowd away, he forbade them to do so.